All right, let's dive right in. Today we're going to deconstruct one of the biggest blockbuster movies ever, Avengers Infinity War, and figure out what makes it tick. We're going to see why a story that seems to break all the rules, well, why it works so incredibly well. When this film first came out, a lot of people were saying that on the surface, it's kind of a narrative mess. I mean, it just throws you right into the middle of the action. It's juggling dozens of characters without one clear hero. And that ending, it left audiences just completely stunned. And yet, here we are, and it's widely seen as a masterpiece. So what's the deal? To solve this little mystery, we have to look past the usual Hollywood rulebooks and go way back, because the key to this super modern movie is hiding in our most ancient stories.
Okay, so here's our first clue. The film pulls this brilliant trick on all of us. It makes you look for the hero in all the wrong places. We just assume it's the Avengers, right? But the real story, the real main character, has been hiding in plain sight the whole time.
Let's just try to reframe how we see this movie for a second. If you actually track who this story is about, it's not the Avengers, it's Thanos. He gets the most screen time, he's the only one who gets a flashback to his past, and his goal is what drives literally every single event in the film. The moment you realize that, the entire story changes. This is Thanos' movie.
So if Thanos is our protagonist, what kind of protagonist is he? He's not just some simple mustache-twirling villain. The reason the story works is that he perfectly fits an ancient archetype, one that Aristotle defined over 2,000 years ago, the tragic hero. This is a character whose story isn't about good versus evil, but about a great person brought down by their own fatal flaw.
And I mean, just look at the company he's in here. Just like these giants from Greek and Shakespearean tragedy, his downfall is actually caused by what he thinks is his greatest strength. For Oedipus, it was his temper. For Macbeth, it was his ambition. For Thanos, it's that absolute unwavering conviction that his horrifying plan is the only way. He can't compromise, and that is the engine of his tragedy. So that brings us to the next big question. If Thanos is our tragic hero, what does that mean for the movie's so-called broken structure? Well, all of a sudden, that familiar hero's journey we all know just doesn't apply. But that doesn't mean it has no structure, not at all. It turns out that storytelling is way more flexible than we usually give it credit for. The classic three-act structure, that's just one of many, many patterns, or shapes as some people call them, that stories can follow. And these patterns are just deeply wired into how we tell stories. In fact, in his book, The 7 Basic Plots, an author named Christopher Booker argues that pretty much every story ever told, from ancient myths all the way to today's blockbusters, fits into one of just 7 fundamental patterns. These are the blueprints for basically all of storytelling: overcoming the monster, rags to riches, the quest. You get the idea. We just recognize these structures instinctively. And this, right here, is where the genius of Infinity War really starts to shine. You see, the movie isn't one broken story. It's 2 perfect, classic plots happening at the exact same time. From the Avengers' point of view, it's a simple overcoming the monster story. But from Thanos' perspective, it is a classic tragedy. The whole reason the film feels so unique and jarring is because we're watching these 2 ancient plot lines unfold and then just smash right into each other. Okay, so if even our most complicated stories are just repeating these old patterns, what are the patterns themselves actually made of? What are the fundamental building blocks of a story?
Well, you can think of them like storytelling DNA. The scholar Richard Dawkins actually had a name for these cultural building blocks. He called them memes. Not the funny pictures online, but ideas and concepts that replicate and evolve over time, passed down from one generation of storytellers to the next.
So the first set of ingredients are character archetypes. These are the universal roles that pop up in stories everywhere, in every culture. You know the ones: the wise mentor, the lonely orphan looking for a family, the brave hero. We get them instantly because they represent something fundamental about being human. And the second ingredient? Universal themes. These are the big ideas that stories are really about: the search for justice, the struggle against fate, the power of sacrifice. These themes are what make a story hit you right in the heart, no matter where or when you're from.
So think about it. When you take these ancient, timeless plots and you fill them with these universal character types and you use them to explore these deep human themes, you end up with something way bigger, way more powerful than just a movie.
You get a modern mythology,
As the legendary comic creator Frank Miller said, our superheroes are basically serving the same purpose for us that the gods on Mount Olympus did for the ancient Greeks. They're these larger-than-life figures that embody everything we value, everything we fear, and everything we aspire to be.
And this isn't just some dusty academic theory either. It's really about how we as a culture treat these stories. We treat them like huge cultural events. As this person on Reddit joked, our collective obsession is so massive that people in the future might actually think we worshipped these guys. So why do these stories have such a powerful, lasting grip on us? Well, the final piece of the puzzle isn't in the story itself. It's actually in us, the audience. There's this idea called reception theory, and it basically argues that a story's meaning isn't set in stone. It's created by every single person who watches it based on their own life and their own culture. So the story isn't just what's happening on the screen. It's the conversation that story has with our world right now. We reinterpret these modern myths to reflect our own anxieties, our own hopes, and that's what keeps them alive. It's what makes characters like Captain America and Thanos just as relevant to us as Oedipus was to the ancient Greeks. At the end of the day, these ancient patterns do more than just build good movies. They tell us something really fundamental about ourselves. We keep telling the same stories: tragedy, rebirth, overcoming the monster, because in a way, they reflect the patterns of our own lives. Which kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What story are you in the middle of right now?